recording this one early, but I'm excited because you just got back from a really awesome retreat. We had Dom the Hypnotist on one of our episodes back a couple of months ago, and I got hypnotized, and I remember what that feeling was like. And this retreat was Dom's retreat that you and Paula went on down in Tulum. Went to Mexico and did all meditation and hypnosis and all sorts of stuff, had a great time. And I think it would just be good to, the Bamboo Banger this week, just talk about your experience, and maybe I can pick up on some of this stuff and relate it back to everyday life, and just let's share, let's talk. How was the trip, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. We shot down for a week, and Paula did not participate fully in the retreat, but it was just our kind of vacation. You know, beautiful place, Tulum, if you haven't been. And
for sure,
was going hard on the mindset, learned some awesome new tips around surrounding neuroscience, you know, applying back to this stuff. It still was a spiritual trip, but practical spirituality, like right up my alley. Paula got some work done. You know, there's something about when you've got the calendar clear, you're in a remote spot, almost a little cave day aspect to it. Both got caught up on some work, awesome food, and just the whole thing is this podcast isn't necessarily to share the travel experiences of the two of us, but when we're gaining so much knowledge on these trips, I love that you wanted to break it down and kind of spread it back to the audience. So pumped to talk about it today.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I mean, you were telling me some stories like, dude, we got to hop on the pod and you got to just share that. I mean, it's unlike any other trip. I mean, most of us go on vacation, relax, and not think, right? And this one was we were putting in the work, and I wasn't there, and you kept sharing how cool it was. I'm like, I'm gonna have to get on one of these retreats soon because it sounded awesome. But talk to us. So, like, did you get hypnotized, or what happened? Did you hypnotize people?
We got hypnotized, but that was the beauty of this trip is we all met Dom, who was on this podcast, and just to recap a little bit, through the lens of hypnosis. And I was pretty anti-hypnosis as of, call it, 5 years ago. It was meditation that led me to hypnosis, which the ties are so similar, almost the same thing to me. And then as we talk about flow states, connecting those three pillars, once I realized they were the same thing, it was like mind blown. And we're really, again, getting back to a state of deep relaxation combined with focused attention. Right. And that's a little bit of the difference between meditation or mindfulness. You're really kind of going open awareness with meditation. It doesn't have to be. We can be focusing on the breath, which is relaxed focus. Right. But that's allowing us to drop into those states, to feel the emotions that we need to feel, and let the noise scatter and go inside to what we truly are trying to evaluate and work on. And when your brain's in that state, that's when you can make permanent change. So with that, we did a ton of hypnosis. We did a ton of meditation, and he did break those out. And this is 5 days of it, right? So we're learning specific techniques and building off of it. And this is where you can truly change your behavior and your practices. And we did a lot of that. A lot came up, especially the first couple of days. You're getting settled in a new country. 8 strangers getting together, getting to know each other. Some of them knew each other, but they were mostly strangers to me besides Dom. But we were all there on the same mission, trying to get better, trying to get our minds and our spirits and our higher selves aligned, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, like, just calming the noise. Like, there's so much that gets thrown at you, and you experience, whether it's work, life, family, friends, coworkers, it doesn't matter, right? You get so many things thrown at you, clients, partners, whatever you're trying to do. And to leverage that meditation, I mean, that's something I've been practicing every morning for the last 18 months and built it into my morning routine. Even if I can only get a couple of minutes at times, like, I got to run, but just those couple of minutes, it's super powerful. And that's me self-guided, right? Like, I'll use like a Spotify app and self-guide it, or lately it's just in the quiet of the morning. I've gotten pretty good at it, and just like centering myself and getting deep into my mind. And it does help that. Now, it doesn't always solve your problems, but it helps bring you centrally focused to, okay, what can I pay attention to, and what can I remember of my mission and what I'm working towards in all aspects of my life. And it really does help. And so to go on that retreat has got to be like 20x that, right? Like, 'cause you're with a group of people that are so in tune and so involved in that practice. And then you have a leader in Dom who's running the retreat to really keep people guided and focused on that. Like, I can only imagine it had to be almost like godlike in a way. Like you just felt like a different power inside of you, or a different being. And you got a chance to talk and sit with people and kind of run a session, which was pretty cool. I know you were excited about that. I don't think you've done a couple of retreats with Dom, but this is the first time you get to run some sessions.
Yeah. Speaking up in front of the group was huge. We shared our stories, and it was a lot of hands-on guiding each other through these, which just improves the muscle memory of it, right? And how this applies to sales. I was connecting all kinds of dots with work and how to level up in that craft, and everything just seemed to come together and was super aligned. And so just really briefly, a little recap on the hypnosis that we talked about with Dom, like getting back to demystifying it, which we did with kind of calling it a state of deep relaxation and focus. But a lot of people think it's the weak-minded people that are easily hypnotizable, that get up on a stage, a clock swings in front of them, and they start quacking like a chicken or something like that. I think,
we were joking about that this morning with the kids. I told them we were going to hop on a pod and talk about hypnosis. And Victoria was like, is that like when you like pretend to be a chicken? I go, yeah, something like that. I'll ask Uncle Phil about it. But it's like, that's what people think of hypnosis, is like, you hear, that's what everyone imagines it's like.
And that's stage hypnosis, right? Vegas has made a big living on that. It's funny or whatever. But the practical clinical hypnosis, you talk to like Dr. David Spiegelman, who's an MD who's using this and got a bunch of trouble for it because he was considered, just by getting the 14-year-old girl quiet and releasing her anxiety and having a medical breakthrough. He was like, you can't do that. You hypnotized a minor. He's like, I just had a conversation with her and you're trying to put her on pain medication and anesthesia, and this worked. Like, come on. And so he's really fought it and everything too. But getting back to the concept that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, and it actually takes a certain level of intelligence, creativity, and imagination to be easily hypnotizable. So these are traits that you want if you're trying to create and bring something into the world. The leaders of our time, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs was a huge meditator. It's being able to get in that silence to bring out what's inside of you into the world in a really focused and clear way. So reshifting that idea of what hypnosis is has been huge to me. And you can call it whatever you want, meditation, whatever, but we're getting to
how has that changed your life? Like once you open your mind up to it, how has that impacted you in your everyday life?
Yeah, I'm using self-hypnosis every day. If I get into a state of stress, I would say stress management's up there, but it's every single aspect. When I'm not feeling like going to the gym, I just hypnotize myself. And a lot of it's just energy clearing, right? Yeah. You get into a practice, and like you said, it can be rapid. That's what I love about this stuff, is once you drop in and you get it, up front, there's work, just getting into the state and getting comfortable with it. But you drop in, you say, okay, this isn't working for me right now. Boom. Let's walk through, relax, deep breaths, get to the problem, clear it out. And it's a pretty simple, straightforward process, but you have to put in the time. It can't be using the time instead to scroll or to turn something on the television or go eat when you don't need to eat. Bring it back, clear it out, and it's amazing how your state can change. Some of the other specific areas, and kind of actually transitioning away from the content from the trip, we talk about this, that you have brought into this sense of, you've benefited me from talking about approaching these trips with the family as a sense of adventure. Not what are we going to necessarily go to this vacation with an outcome in mind of, I'm going to be relaxed on the beach with a Mai Tai, but like, how is this an adventure? And sure as heck, this trip was an adventure. We were biking everywhere, which That's awesome. Didn't realize there's no Ubers down there. Though our condo and the venue were super nice, the travel in between was a bit sketchy, and we had to upgrade to bikes in the middle. The bikes weren't that great. The roads were rocky and tumbly. And I think a lot of people, myself included, my mindset was first like, man, I worked so hard to go on vacation, and here I am biking through the slums being chased by a dog.
That's an adventure, man. And that makes life fun.
Avoiding like a food truck that almost hit me. It was, and that's when I started laughing by myself, showing up to the thing all full sweat. Like, this is what it's about. This is what it's about. Out of the comfort zone. A portion of that I wanted to bring up is, we're so blessed, this entitlement of being able to say, oh yeah, to go and get in that environment's such a blessing. It's an adventure, but people are living their day in and day out, and you can't help but have a sense of gratitude on these trips. You're in a third world country. But on that note, I would say, looking around, this is my judgment. I know people are going to say, well, yeah, it looks that way to you. But I saw some of the happiest people consistently getting off from a hard day's work of mostly labor, and, smiling and hugging each other, joking around with each other all over the place. And it's like, man, these folks are in this area that's so different than I. We have all these luxuries, and they probably see me on vacation and are like, oh, look how lucky these individuals are to be able to come and just bike around and grab juices and hang by the pool and beach. And I'm looking at them like, man, these people are so present in a community in their day-to-day working value. This is so cool. They've defined success for themselves. And that perspective is so awesome to get while you're on vacation and shift things up as you're kind of resetting to get back into whatever mission you're on back at your hometown.
Dude, that you nailed it. I mean, I remember it's so true because we were in, when was it? October last year in Puerto Vallarta. And I think we talked about it on one of the episodes, but we were there in the midst of that hurricane that came through. And that opened up my eyes of like, these towns got decimated, and yet these people just came back and let's rebuild. And they just came back as a group, as a community, and just rebuilt their area. And so here we are on a boat and an excursion doing zip lining. We were like the first excursion back, and Kim and I remember just us talking about like how weird we felt doing this. And it was like, why are we doing this? Like, why don't we why did we just cancel the excursion or whatever? But it also was like, well, they need to make a living too. So it was like they needed our money to do the excursion and all stuff, right? So you have these thoughts, but you just look at how they came, and they were like helping us, making sure we had a good time. And it was wild, like the perspective. And like, man, these people just lost their roof. They lost their furniture from this hurricane, and now they have to build their roof themselves and rebuild their home. And they all came together as a community. And I've got problems. Like, I don't have any problems, like when you look at the grand scheme of things, like if something were to happen to my roof, I'd call a roofer and, get them to come out and fix it. Like, it's not the case in some of these areas and parts of the world that we find as vacation spots and luxuries and things where we can go relax and have fun. But looking at it as an adventure and perspective in everything that you do is the way to go. And so I'm glad you had that, kind of the eye-opening experience, which you've had them before, but it's just like when you're in that zone and in that mode, it's neat to hear because it's, that's life. And we're not in this so many of us are in this little bubble, right? And it's like getting out and experiencing some of that opens your eyes up to what else is out there, what's possible, and what really is going on.
And I mean, back to like bringing that energy into the container that was the retreat, we were diving in so deep on stuff on the way perimeter of what is considered, normal practices for improvement. And one of them that was super interesting, and we were practicing and just getting to the initial stages of it, was remote viewing. Are you familiar with remote viewing at all?
So I don't know 100% about it, but it has something to do with like visualizing something in the distance or something like that, right?
Yeah. So literally this was a part of if you go to the CIA's website, which we'll link in the show notes, the CIA started using this. There's a movie made with Clooney about it, Men Who Stare at Goats. But the Stargate project is what it was called back in the 70s and 80s. And it's remote viewing is a psychic phenomena where these individuals, I think Joe McMoneagle, he was in the army and able to, there was a specific submarine that they were trying to identify where it was. It was a Soviet submarine that they could not find. And he was able to pinpoint the coordinates exactly. And this wasn't a one-off thing. He spent all day, every day doing this. This was his craft and job. And so they had a number of wins with it. They also had a bunch of misses. Obviously, you're dealing with, spatial energy, and this is a concept that's really hard to explain by science. But they had so many wins, they kept on with it for 2 decades. It did get discontinued in 1995. And our conspiracy theorists out there might be kind of saying, oh, wow, it worked too well. Maybe we don't want people to know about this.
How to use their mind effectively.
Do your own research. But the practices we were doing getting to the initial stages were just around objects in the area and trying to get to the point. What you're trying to do is get back to that state of relaxed focus, trying to embody like where spatially it is, and waiting for the blips to come through in your subconscious mind of, okay, here's an increase in frequency and intuition. This is really what it is intuition for those of the listeners. That's what we got to is the crux of it when you're trying to explain it. You're increasing your intuition to make it highly sensitive. And as these blips come up in your mind and you feel really strongly, oh, it's flat. Oh, it has rounded edges. It's got this color to it. And you start just getting the feedback because you have a target, a visualizer, and a recorder. Or I might be getting those three off, but as you're going through this process, you're basically trying to see what your intuition brings to you on a specific area, looking for a specific thing, and finding its location. So super interesting stuff. We'll link in the show notes, but that's the kind of stuff we were doing out here. Like, had no idea that what we were in for going in. It was a really cool practice to start noodling on.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, it reminds. It's like echolocation from a dolphin. You know,
you
like
would,
they can
you would bring this back to dolphins.
Dude, I love dolphins. They're like,
sonar. Sonar. Is that what's
called? Exactly. Like they're just in the water and all of a sudden they just know where all the things are in the vast ocean or whatever for miles or whatever. But I have these, I wear these wristbands. You have one, these SuccessFlow bands. And one of them is the visualize the moment. Like I've always had this ability, and everyone has this ability to you just see something that's about to happen. And I don't know if it's necessarily the same thing that you're talking about, but like let's say Jack is up to bat and I can just see what's going to happen. Like the ball, that's where it's going to go, or the hit he's going to get, or even when you're playing cards, you almost can see what card's going to come up next sometimes, and maybe get lucky. I don't know, but you have this visualize the moment. And that stuff's so powerful. But this remote viewing aspect is like, I bet you everybody's had an epiphany of like, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. It's almost like manifestation in a way too. And then it does. And so I think you're right. I think we are suppressed to not use this anymore. And the mind is probably so powerful that they're like, holy shit, we can't allow people to be able to tap into this. Because everyone,
it's what all the great creators are doing. It's what they're all doing it, whether they're calling it meditation or not. It has to be in your mind before you start taking any action to build a physical product or offering or service in the world.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on that, it has to be in your mind. So, whenever I go into a talk or a presentation or speaking engagement or something, I run my talk through my mind, but I put it together. I don't necessarily put it together on paper or do bullets or whatever. I put it together and I visualize me speaking to the crowd of what's going to, the audience of what are the reactions I'm going to get? What if I do this? What if I do that? And I play the whole thing in my mind well before I even speak anything out loud to prepare for or practice the actual talk. And that works really well for me. And I think what you're talking about is that works really well for a lot of people to visualize that, understand what it is that you're and then you stamp that image into your brain, and then you deliver when you put in the practice, and it goes almost identical to how you visualize. You might pivot and do different things, but it's like when you first start with that stamping of visualizing how it's going to go in your brain on anything that you do, and then you go take the action, more often than not, you're probably only a 10% deviation of how it actually goes.
Exactly. This is a practice. I mean, we talked about a number of times on this pod, but if you're not doing it yet, start small. Start visualizing your day or one portion of your day, a walk you're going on. It'd be amazing how close it gets to that mental movie you're playing in your head. And on that note, there's a new, I was talking about the podcast down there because people weren't familiar with the alter ego concept.
Oh,
and so I was able to give a little bit of a rundown because it was so similar to a new concept we learned, but I thought was completely similar, called grocking. Ever heard of grocking?
I have not heard of grocking, no.
Not a great word. It does not roll off the tip of the tongue.
It's a hard one to say. It's like one of those words that sounds like a noise.
or an action. Well, it is an action, but a noise or I don't know what it is about it. But anyways, grocking is a term for, say you're getting ready to go up on stage. You're feeling a little nervous. You have a specific message you're trying to convey. And say that message is like the power within you, like we're talking right now. You could grok Tony Robbins. And how you do this is get into that relaxed, focused, meditative state and start imagining literally how Tony Robbins would give the speech. What's his physicality? What's his vocal tone? What's he smelling? This is back to visualization, but you're embodying the powers of that individual. Now you still want to let your message and your authentic self come through, but we were doing this as a group. We all went around and did it. I did Marcus Aurelius, and it was crazy how your brain just started. I started recalling everything I've read about Marcus Aurelius, and it just came out. I was talking as him though, and so like I got very stern and stoic, and it was really interesting process, and it flowed relatively well, like really well. And so it was like, we know these terms. That's getting very specific on a type of visualization, the alter ego aspect, but just like anything, you can, like the alter ego, you can turn it off and on. And the alter ego is a consistent one that you want to turn on that really embodies you. But this is a way, depending on your situation, you can take on the attributes of others.
That's awesome. I love hearing that story. Did you guys do anything fun? Did you get any time, like free time, you and Paula go out to dinner and do that kind of stuff while you're out there?
Some really good meals. And then we did an excursion out to the Mayan ruins, which I wanted to chat about because that was also really coming to my head, like ancient ceremonial grounds by the Mayans. And like some of the walls had like handprint blood stains on them, which I was like, did they put those up like a Halloween, like horror story? Like, yeah, that's where I was going because if so, that's some old blood on the walls because there wasn't a lot of them. There's just a couple. But seeing that and realizing you start going to the head with like the doom and gloom that's around right now. It's like, imagine what those folks were doing. I mean, they're having like human sacrifices out on those cliffs overlooking the ocean, but yeah. It just made me thinking about, I'm sure that they were up there praying, thinking, oh, the end of the world's coming too. Like, this is the end of times. And look at us, like time's gone on. Now we're looking at their burial grounds as a piece of art and history in this beautiful setting overlooking the ocean. And your mind, when you're in this state, you just keep going that direction. There's these iguanas everywhere that almost seem like they're protecting the ruins. And I'm like, well, maybe they know humans can't get up there, so they know they're safe. It's probably more of the behavioral characteristics.
Those things are just huge too.
They look like they're just like guarding the burial ground or something. It's really wild, but that was pretty awesome. And besides that, some awesome healthy meals down in Tulum. If you're really trying to take a wellness vacation, that's the spot. Like there is so much juices and clean organic foods, relatively Americanized, but you can get a little bit of both, right? Like any good vacation. But highly recommend it. And highly recommend it if it's not Tulum and it's not hypnosis. What are you working on right now? What's sparked your interest at this moment that you want to go dive deep for a week? Maybe it's a long weekend if you can't swing a week, but get in that space with like-minded people. The ability to focus and embody that interest or that passion and get better, these retreats are awesome to do so. And if you're interested in hypnosis, reach out to me or reach out to Dom. He's an expert. He's changing lives. And it was an awesome trip.
Dude, I'm glad you had such a great time. Thanks for sharing stories and whatnot. I learned a lot. I think that's the pod for this week, man. Have a good one.
Sounds good. We'll be back at you next week.